Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Jason Sheldrick. I'm the workshop moderator for today. Today's workshop is Strategies to Support English Language Learners in the Science Classroom, which will be presented by Veronica Burnett, Regional STEM Specialist for Texas and New Mexico for Accelerate Learning STEMscopes. We have 45 minutes for this workshop, and after Veronica's presentation, we'll have a Q&A. Please use the chat window to communicate with other participants, answer questions, share ideas, resources, and experiences. We have representatives from Accelerate Learning STEMscopes in the chat, so they'll be able to answer any questions you might have as we proceed through the workshop. Also, note that the chat window is part of the recording, so please keep your posts on topic. You certainly can chat privately with other participants, and that's not recorded. Your microphones will remain muted for the duration of the session, and we ask that you please keep your cameras off. Let's see, after the session ends, and actually probably about 10 minutes before we get to closing, I'm going to share the session link in the chat, and also it will appear in the schedule. If you click on today's schedule, you'll be able to access the session evaluation link if you don't catch it here. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Veronica.
Hello, everyone. Like you said, my name is Veronica Burnett. I'm excited to welcome you into this session. We will be together for 45 minutes. And I'm going to, on the next slide. So that's my picture. I have been in education for the last 18 years. I was a lab teacher for the last 10. And I truly feel helping English learners is my passion. I actually learned English when I was in high school. I came to America when I was 15 years old. So they have a special place in my heart because I am one myself. So I'm hoping to give you a lot of strategies that you can use in your classroom with English learners. The objectives for today are, I'm going to actually navigate through a lesson using the 5E model of instruction. As a teacher, I'm always striving to improve my instructional practices and to, of course, enhance my student learning. I found that the 5E model of instruction was just perfect. The perfect need my students have. It actually is how students learn. I will also show you some strategies to support your English learners as they acquire the content in English. And I will do all of this through a program called STEMscopes. And even if you don't have STEMscopes, the strategies will still work with you. But I will use pictures and activities from STEMscopes. I wanted to begin my presentation by showing you a picture and why and how amazing technology was. This is how it was when I started teaching. So things have changed very, very dramatically over especially the last year due to the world pandemic. Technology looks very different nowadays. So I wanted to begin by asking you, what is one tip of something that you can help, something that you've discovered or learned lately over this pandemic that you feel supports digital learning? So would you please type something in the chat just to give us some ideas of what you've been using to support digital learning. So Jason or Ken, would you please help me? What are a couple of ideas our participants have said?
Sure, this is Jason. So I see Seesaw app, Flipgrid, Seesaw, and WebEx, to name a few. Nearpod, Jamboard, Flipgrid. Wow, it's a lot of Flipgrid. Google Forms for formative assessments, making video recordings to share with students, visuals and props, hands-on activities, Nearpod, relationships with students, Google Slides, create and post video instructions and snippets, Nearpod Classroom, Immersive Reader, wow, this is a lot, and talking points to communicate effectively with all families.
You guys are fantastic. Oh, wow. That's much more than I expected. But yes, so I just wanted to say we all have a lot of great ideas. And what I'm going to share with you today is it's not like a one size fits all. We all have students with different learning needs. And I wanted to give you what from my point of view and my experience, but I just wanted to also tell you, these are unprecedented times. We are living through a world pandemic, and we don't really have to like solve the world's problems, but if we instill and empower our students, then we would give them the confidence to maybe pursue education careers where they in the future solve the world's problems. So I appreciate all of those answers. I'm having trouble with my slide. Okay, next slide. So I will be talking about shot waterfall in a minute. Somehow my slide doesn't want to continue. All right, so English learners in the US. There is over 4 million students, almost 5 million students now in the US that are English learners. They now make up 10% of public education. So even if you are not a bilingual teacher or an English as a second language teacher, you will probably have to be supporting English students in your classroom. So this is why I feel that I want to give you a lot of strategies. I feel that you might need to be supporting them even in your classrooms. English learners develop STEM knowledge and language proficiency when they are truly engaged in meaningful interactions. And like I said earlier, probably the program that I've used that provided all of those meaningful interactions to my students with the 5E model. So I'm going to briefly describe you the 5E model because this is what I will be going through right now. It begins with an engage activity. There are 5Es in the 5E model. The first one's engage. The engage is intended to pique the curiosity of your students, and it's intended to be maybe like a quick teacher demonstration. And it helps teachers determine if there are some misconceptions that might need to be addressed. Then we move on to the explore. During the explore, our students are really getting an experience with the content. It could be through maybe a hands-on activity or some kind of experience. And I'll give you several choices right now on how to adapt this to a distance learning model right now that everybody is encountering. Then we move on to the explain is where the students let us know what they are learning, either orally or through writing. And once our students have gone through the first 3 E's, they have a very good idea of what the content looks like. And now hopefully we want to help them elaborate. So maybe they can make connections to the real world, connected to different content areas. The last E is evaluate, but we do not wait to the very end to evaluate. Of course, we have been evaluating through the entire process, but we do have to have some kind of end product to make sure that the learning has taken place. I'm going to begin with a quick strategy that I feel that it truly addresses the way our students learn. This is QTripleS. I actually read about this in a book named Talk, Read, Talk, Write by Nancy Motley. We are going to put a little link of that in the chat box. But basically, English learners need extra think time, right? They need a little bit of time to process the question. They need a lot of support in how to begin to answer the question. So they would need a sentence stem to add structure to the way that they question. They need to be able to share with one another. So I feel that QTripleS strategy totally covers the way that our students learn. So we begin with a question. The questions need to be open-ended because open-ended questions have a lot of answers. If you put a question that is closed-ended, there's only one right answer and a lot of wrong ones, right? So we want to make sure your question is open-ended. Then we need to provide our students with a signal, some kind of way where they can let us know they are ready to answer the question. It could be something simple like maybe a thumbs up or, touch your nose, or lift up your pencil, something very, very simple. And ideally something that is it doesn't require any talking. So I think, thumbs up works perfect. Then we, of course, need to provide a sentence stem so our students can give us the answer. And then we provide a way for our students to share the information. If we get to be back in the classroom, it would probably be share with your neighbor. But in this new world of distance learning, you can have, you can choose one of your students, or you can have like a random selection picker from the internet. And teachers assess and that our students got the correct answer. And then we look at the students who didn't to make sure that we address any misconceptions. So I'm going to go ahead and actually use this. We're going to do a little, I'm going to use it with you guys. I'm going to give you a question. So my question to you is, what is your favorite strategy to support English learners in your classroom? So I'm not able to see you right now, but if I was able to see you, then I would ask you definitely to give me a thumbs up. So I'm going to hope, since you were really quick to answer before, I'm gonna hope that you already have a quick answer.
Hey, Veronica, this is Ken. Let me share with you some of the responses.
Oh, wow, they're already in there.
Concrete experiences, graphic organizers, group collaboration, word walls with multiple languages, using the drawing tool, scaffolding and immersing them into English ASAP, pair share, tangible experiences, small groups to build confidence, matching objects to works, sentence frames, KWL, that came up. So a lot of different methods here.
I am so
Word walls
excited.
and multiple
Yeah,
languages.
wow, I'm so excited you're all so engaged. So I was going to suggest that you go onto this Padlet. I created a Padlet. So this is a suggestion for distance learning. If you are doing video conferencing with your students, the way you can have them, you guys all add it to the chat, which is perfectly fine. But anyways, you can also create a Padlet, which I did here. And I'm going to show you, I'm not going to actually go to the Padlet since everybody already answered. But the way this works is you would hover over with the camera on your phone and it will take you to a Padlet. And it looks, let me show you what it looks like. So it looks something like this. So your students would be able to answer on the first column. In the first column, I added the sentence stem so that they would have my favorite strategy to support English learners is. So this is a strategy that I feel totally addresses the need for your students. And I'm truly excited that you have already given me so many answers, but I'm gonna give you a few of my own, and then I'm gonna actually show you how to use them throughout that one specific lesson. So right here, I'm going to add a few of them. And these are some of the ones Ken just read that you guys already said, which was, of course, make it visual, scaffold, use sentence frames, teach vocabulary in every lesson. Now, vocabulary is so key. And let me just tell you, our students don't go home and they say, hey, mom, it's been raining for the last 3 days. Look at all the weathering that's happening in the backyard. Like, they don't speak like that. So we actually expressly have to teach those vocabulary science words, right? The academic vocabulary is so key. Right now, we are going through a world pandemic. So definitely we need to address the social and emotional needs our students are having. I just read a post and it said, it started by lead with love instead of lessons. And I just felt that was so beautiful. So I definitely invite you, if you are having, video conferencings, maybe give the students a chance to have one private with you so that you can address what they are going through at home. This is unprecedented times, like I said earlier, and even our students are having and experiencing a lot of different emotional needs that we normally wouldn't have to cover in a classroom. Definitely set high expectations. I wrote learn to pronounce your students' names because my name's Veronica and I'm Mexican. So I don't know if you knew this, but all the Veronicas in Mexico, they call them Vero. I don't know why, but I always disliked that so badly. So I always just wanted people to call me Veronica. Like, I was like, my name is not Vero, whatever they would call me. Anyway, so I can tell you from personal experience, I did not like people changing my name. So, just so that your students feel included and accepted, please use their name correctly. Definitely give your students extra wait time. a lot of group work, a lot of peer interaction. Right now is a little bit more challenging because we are all doing video conferencing, but definitely use, those breakout rooms, put students in smaller groups. It is a lot less challenging to share with one peer or two than to just be sharing to the entire class, especially when your English is not that great. Speak slowly. I'm kind of not modeling this correctly right now because I only have 45 minutes and I have so many things to tell you. But when you are with your students, definitely speak slowly, clearly, and definitely no idioms. I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but avoid confusing information for your students. All right, so we are going to begin. The lesson cycle begins on the 5 E's, begins with an engage activity. Engage is, like I said earlier, something super quick just to pique the interest of your students. And I'm hoping that you have something to write, and I'm hoping that you have a pencil and a paper, and I want you to think of a tree. And I want you to put it on a piece of paper. I'm hoping that you are able to do that. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to think of it. Did it look like that? I know you can't show me, but did it look like that one? Or were you thinking more something like a Christmas tree because we're nearing Christmas time right now? Did you put some apples in it? Now I'm curious to see if anybody thought of the words. Did you put the words on the paper? I just did this activity just to show you that 90% of us think in pictures. When we are thinking of a concept, we think in pictures. We remember 10% of what we hear, but if you add pictures, your students will remember 65% of what you show them. So definitely, I want to encourage you to use visuals to support the content. In our program in STEMscopes, the lessons begin with an engaged activity that is called Investigative Phenomena. It normally is it's a picture or a video, and this is how we introduce the concept. So I definitely encourage you to use visuals. In this case, we are looking underwater. So I would ask my students, what do you notice? What do you wonder? And I would take the activity from here on, but I'm gonna actually add something to the visuals. Okay, so as you provide a visual, see, I'm thinking of your English learners. They don't speak English very well, so you put a picture up on the screen like you're seeing right now. I can guarantee you some of them would be thinking, now, what are we talking about? Is it raining? Because I see like underneath the cloud, it is raining. Is this a lake? Are we gonna be talking about mountains? I'm not clear on what, and actually that picture, what I was intending to show you was the water cycle, but I don't think that's clear. So I want to invite you to provide structure to the visuals. Even if you add a visual, make sure that you add words, add arrows. So like now this picture has a lot of structure, right? So like for instance, even if I don't speak English, I can see a sun, and I know that solar energy, even if I don't understand the words, I can see the sun is heating up the water. I can see the arrows. There's evaporation going on. There are clouds forming. There's precipitation. So even if I don't speak very good English, in my brain, somehow this is making sense. I know this is the water cycle. Some students might be thinking, you know what, when solar energy heats up the water evaporates. Some other children might be thinking water vapor goes up, forms the clouds. I can see condensation, precipitation. So even just by giving some structure to your visual, you have increased the vocabulary of your students. You make sure that you include all of the words, include all the arrows, make sure that they truly have an idea of what's going on. The second E is the explore. This is the hands-on activities. The pictures you are seeing, once again, are from STEMscopes, but you can use any hands-on activity in your lesson. And I can tell you from personal experience, even though I did not speak English in high school, when I was in science class and we did a hands-on activity, my brain is still learning what's going on. I can understand the concept. It might be in Spanish, but the learning is still happening. So now you as a teacher need to provide me with, the vocabulary to attach to my new learning, but the learning is still happening. So I definitely invite you to use hands-on activities with your students. Now, we are once again in a world pandemic. So I want to provide you a couple of adaptations for distance learning. So if you are doing distance learning, you might be able to do maybe a live teacher demonstration of the hands-on piece. Maybe you can record yourself doing a video of the demonstration with the activity. Maybe you can use a video about the content that would portray what you're trying to convey, the idea. Maybe you can use some PhET simulations. All of these things provide the experience with the content that we want to give our students. We want to make sure that they understand what the concept is by kind of having that experience. Now, all of these items are already embedded in our program. If you do not have STEMscopes, if you don't know about STEMscopes, in the chat, Ken's going to add a link, and we can definitely provide you with a 30-day preview of our program so you can see all of the wonderful features that are already embedded. So at the end of the presentation, I will share my PowerPoint with you. So I wanted to show you right here, there are 4 links. And so everything is linked and all the links work. I verified. So this is another idea. So if you've decided to make a video of yourself teaching the content of your students, the research has shown that you have them captive for about 6 minutes. So you need to speak very fast. I would definitely maybe create a little script just to make sure that you hit everything, that you hit the vocabulary words, that you hit the concept. Speak very enthusiastically to make sure that your students are with you. And now on the links, I have a 4-part video series created by Dr. Whitney Dove. She works for STEMscopes. She created a fantastic way on helping you how to create videos for your classroom. So definitely click on the links, all of those work. And you know what, you don't have to be nervous about making a video because our students spend so much time watching TikToks. They are watching YouTubers all the time. So basically just people that make TikToks, they just kind of grab their phone and start recording. So your students just want to see you. They want to know, that you're the one giving them the information. So I definitely encourage you to make a video. Now, if you don't want to make a video, the research has shown that if you are giving them a live demonstration of the activity, your students will be held captive for about 15 minutes. So you have them a little bit longer. So just make sure that you speak clearly, that speak a little bit slower, and make sure that you continuously check for understanding to make sure that they are getting the concept. Okay, so my next strategy, once you have provided the experience with the content, so our students have an idea, we want to bring in all the literacy pieces, right? We want to bring in the reading piece. Now, reading in science can be very difficult for our students. So my suggestion is you chunk the content. Your English learners are learning English, and sometimes adding those science academic vocabulary can feel like a third language, because they don't have that. So definitely chunk the content, maybe separate the paragraphs and decide, the first paragraph is for a couple of students, and then have them share out what they read. And an idea in order to chunk the content is to use highlighting. And let me talk to you about highlighting plus. Let me tell you why I called it plus. So I was a lab teacher for 10 years, and I went to the dollar store and I bought a whole bunch of highlighters, and I gave them to my students, and I was like, okay, we're going to highlight important information. And I gave them no instructions, no focus. I just said, whatever you find that is very important, highlight it. Well, my students wanted to make it all look pretty, and instead of highlighting key, they were like kind of just highlighting half of the page. So it didn't kind of make any sense. So I invite you to make sure that you give your students a focus. Make sure you say, so when you read, the first paragraph, you can only highlight one sentence about refraction. So if you could only highlight one sentence, what would be the sentence that is the most important? Because what has the key information that we would need? And also, another thing that you can do is if you are face-to-face, hopefully soon, then on the side, if you your students are highlighting on paper, then I would have them annotate on the side of the paper. I would have them annotate, why did you consider this sentence the most important? And if not, so there are some apps like Kami or something on in the internet that allow your students to highlight. Now, if you are a STEMscopes user, you know that our program allows students to highlight the information within their device and also allows them to annotate. So graphic organizers to chunk the content. These are amazing. So the research has shown that if you use like close reading strategies, you can use an activity for before the reading, something like maybe look at text features and decide what is the content going to be about. Let's look at all of the bolded information. And then you can have an activity as your students are reading in order to chunk it. Maybe they are looking at vocabulary words as they read the content. And then you can have an activity for after the reading. So maybe some kind of activity that maybe summarizes the activity so that you can have, maybe I would definitely use these as maybe formative assessments. So something that's important if you are going to use these graphic organizers. So make sure that you teach your students that when you see a shape on a graphic organizer, it is okay to put one word or two words or a fragment of a sentence, because sometimes our students want to put the entire paragraph on a little tiny square and then it just defeats the purpose. What we're trying to do is chunk the content and pull out key details from the reading, right? So we want to make sure that if 3 words make sense, then we'll pull out the 3 words that make sense. So I wanted to show you all of the graphic organizers that you've seen in here are found in STEMscopes, but I actually downloaded them and I added them to a folder. And in a minute, I'm going to share you in the folder with everything is linked. So you can have access to all of these. The one that you're seeing in front of you is a graphic organizer about claim evidence reasoning. And I definitely always love promoting claim and evidence because I was a lab teacher. So that's what we did in the lab, right? We were scientists and we always looked for evidence. So I'm going to show you a very simple strategy that I used in my classroom. I would plan these amazing hands-on activities with my students, and I would have them at the end of the week. I would have them, you know, give me a writing piece about what did you learn in the lab this week. And I was so very frustrated because what my students did is they would give me a description of what we did in the lab, but there was no meat and potatoes. You know, what is the content? What is the meat? What did you truly learn in the lab? And I found that they wouldn't give me that. Okay, so I use this paper that you see in front of you, and I've included this in your folder. I went to Kinko's and I made it into a poster. So then what I did is I would take my standard. What am I teaching you this week? So let's say I was teaching you the light travels in a straight line until it strikes an object and either reflects or reflects. So let's say that's my claim for the week. I would take my standard and put it as a claim. And I would tell my students on Monday, boys and girls, today we are looking for evidence that supports my claim the light travels in a straight line. So as we do activities throughout the week, I want you to find me some evidence. So let's say we did a hands-on piece on Monday, and I would say, did you guys find any evidence today that light travels in a straight line? So then a child would raise their hand and I would add evidence to the very first box. The next day, maybe we were doing a reading piece. I would say, as you read this paper, find me evidence the light travels in a straight line. So then a student will raise their hand, oh my gosh, I found evidence. And we would like write it here. I would make a big deal out of it. Oh my, we're finding evidence the light travels in a straight line. The next day, maybe I gave them a video, content connection videos. So they're watching a video and I would say before I play the video, as you watch this video, remember, we are looking for evidence the light travels in a straight line. So then students would raise their hand, oh my gosh, look what they just said, blah, blah, blah. So throughout the entire week, we added evidence to this poster. So on Friday, when I asked my students, I'm gonna need you to write a paragraph of what did you learn in the lab this week? It was amazing. every one of the boxes was one of the paragraphs supporting our claim that light travels in a straight line, or whatever, you know, our standard was for the week. So this totally helped the way my students were writing in the science lab. And this does not have to be a science paper. You know, if you think about it, in the center, I can, maybe if you read a story, you can do a character analysis. And in the center, you put the name of the character, you know, Snow White is nice and kind. Why? And then each one of the boxes, you find text evidence that supports, you know, the character. Maybe you can use this in social studies. In the center, you can say, you know, World War II was a mistake. Why? Because of all of these happened because of it. So anyways, I just love this paper, and I included it in English and in Spanish on the folder that I'm gonna share with you shortly, so that you can, I'm hoping that you can use this with your students. Now, if that's a little too much to give your students, let me just show you. When they are not able to write a lot, I started verbally, like I started like speaking, and I wanted to give them I wanted to give my students this skill of, you know, finding evidence and creating claims. So I would put a picture on the wall, and I started with very simple. So if you just Google, you know, guilty dog, guilty child, you're gonna find so many pictures, but it had to be something truly very obvious, like in this picture. And I would ask this, I would just portray this on the video call or on the screen if you are in the classroom. Give me 2 pieces of evidence and tell me what happened here. And I started orally, so they could just share with their partner, or in this case, maybe since we are on video conferencing, they could just type it in the chat. 2 pieces of evidence and then what happened. And I did this over and over. And that's as far as we took it. It was basically, as a classroom, we decided what happened here. 2 pieces of evidence and then what happened. And it doesn't have to be a picture. I started with pictures every day. They knew if I put up a picture, they're looking for evidence, they're trying to figure out what happened. Once they got really good orally at looking at pictures, then I moved on to graphs. Of course, that one's not kind of good example, but of course we want them to have, you know, the values and everything. But I wanted them to really learn. Every time I put up a picture, I'm looking for evidence and I'm trying to decide what happened. And I found that this became a skill that I gave my students, because sometimes they take an assessment, maybe in reading, and if they would have just looked at the picture, sometimes our students kind of skip the picture and go to the bottom and, you know, answer the questions. And you go, oh my gosh, the answer was on the picture. If they would have just looked at the picture. So I wanted to make sure that every child that went through my lab, they knew the skill of always stopping at every picture, every graph, to look for evidence and decide what happened. Sentence stems. I can tell you, because I learned English in high school content is so difficult. And every time a teacher asked me a question, I would be so worried about people maybe being, I don't know, people laughing at me and me saying it in the correct way in English, that I was so worried about the language that I couldn't really learn the content. So if you provide sentence stems for your students, you are actually, you know, helping them with the language so they can move on and learn the content. So definitely, you know, sentence stems will help them answer and complete sentences. It models the grammatical structures that we want them to use in the classroom, gives the students vocabulary, and allows them to participate in the conversations. So you are eliminating all of the pressure from your students, and you are definitely increasing their language proficiency. These are my favorites. So if you take nothing else from today, please give your students sentence stems. Just give them a way to get started.
Veronica, we have about 10 minutes left.
Okay, thank you, Ken. All right, so I wanted to give you an example of how sentence stems can actually be differentiated. So the very first one that you see here in blue, that one I would use with the entire class. Even my English speakers, they also need a way of answering in a correct way. You know, they also need to learn the proper way a scientist would answer this way, right? The academic vocabulary found in the classroom. So I would definitely use them even with English speakers. Now, you can differentiate them all the way down to I can infer. That would be for a very beginning student. And you can take, according to the level of your students, you can use whichever one will facilitate their learning. And I wanted to give you the difference between sentence frames and sentence stems, because I do feel that they are different. Some people just say sentence frames, some people say sentence stems. This is how I interpret it, sentence frames. If you think of a picture frame, there is something in the center and it is framed, right? So a sentence frame it has already most of the words and your students fill in a couple of the blanks. Like the first sentence, my name is blank and I am blank years old. Sentence stems, the way I feel is that I interpret it is the beginning of a sentence. You are helping you're helping your students begin the answer. But like for instance, based on the data, or today I learned. So that's the difference. These are the two most popular ways of writing in a science classroom. So what my strategy is giving very explicit directions to your students. So like, for instance, when they are giving you a clear explanation, you need to make sure that you explain to your students what you're doing today is teaching someone else the information on paper. So be very precise, give me facts, details, examples. So if, let's say you are a 5th grader, and if you write an explanation of what we did in the lab today, if a 2nd grader read your explanation, then they will be able to replicate what we did in the lab by just reading your explanation, right? Now, if they are writing, making claims with evidence, then the purpose is different. Now you're trying to convince the reader to think in the same way as you think. And how do you convince the reader? By giving them a lot of evidence, by providing facts and all of the evidence that you collected. Something else that I want to mention here is that sometimes my students gave me very short explanations because they would think, well, Miss Burnett was with us when we made this, so she already kind of knows what we did. So they were like very simple. So if you change the audience, so sometimes I would say, you know what, guys, today the principal will rate your explanation, and they'll go, oh no, like she wasn't there. Or what if your parents were to read it? So make sure that you change the audience so that they actually give you a better explanation and give you a lot more details. Now, if that's too high for your students, I want to give you another writing scaffold. So if you have like younger writers, I would start with a very engaging picture. So like the one in the screen, and I would ask the students to, they can use their 5 senses. So tell me, add more detail. Tell me, what does it look like in the picture? What does the bear look like? What does the fish look like? What does it sound like? What does it smell like? What does it feel like? How does it taste? So once you ask all of these different questions and you bring the 5 senses involved, you get them involved, then they can add a lot more detail. All right, so use picture vocabulary. This is, of course, everybody knows this is what we do, right? We provide definitions, examples. These are examples of the ones that are found in STEMscopes. But I want to take it a little step further. So as you put your word walls, right? I want you to organize the words. So like, for instance, when I'm showing you on the screen, those are in Serbian. So I don't know if you speak Serbian, but those words are in Serbian. I don't know if you understand them, but let me show you what happens as soon as I add pictures and I organize them. Our brain always looks for organization. Our brain wants to be organized, right? So I don't know if you speak Serbian, but I'm hoping at this point you already kind of know what I'm talking about in here. I'm talking about energy. And even more than that, the first one is forms of energy that are heat. The middle one are sound, and the last one is light. And I'm hoping that you pick that up just by the organization in the pictures. So once you start creating your word walls, make sure that you organize the way you add the words. So this is another example of a document found in STEMscopes. The way I use this is I add vocabulary words, and I have my students not only connect two of the words, but also write what the connection is. And this is a wonderful activity that I found, but this would have to be face-to-face. So I wanted to give you an adaptation for distance learning. So this is what I created. Now, I'm not able to show you right now here, but the box and the instructions, I took a picture of that, right? And I added it as, this is a Google slide. So I added it as the background. So my students cannot move the word, the instructions, or the boxes here, but all of these squares. So my adaptation would be that they take two of the words of the vocabulary we've used all week, and then they explain to me how they're related. So that would be my adaptation. You give them the Google slide and they will explain to you which words they choose and how they're related. One last thing I want to show you is clarify vocabulary. So as you read your standard, as you say, okay, this week we are going to be developing a model and describing how the number of atoms do not change a medical reaction. And so basically this is my standard for the week, right? So as a English speaker, I can tell you the word mass would have thrown me off, because I would be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We're in science class. My teacher wants to promote us to go to mass. See, to me, that means that we are going to a religious service. So somehow you've lost me. Instead of thinking of chemical reactions, I am now thinking, why is my teacher telling me to go to church? Make sure you say, you know, mass means a religious service, but in the science classroom, we're going to use it as the measurement of how much matter is present. So make sure that you look at those words that can be confusing for your students and just clarify them for them. I've added in the folder a list of cognates, 30% of English words that have a cognate in Spanish. So I added a huge list that I got from region 13. So I just added that to the folder.
Veronica, we have minutes. I know you're getting close. A few more slides left.
How many?
Oh, about 2 minutes left.
Oh, wow. Okay, so elaborate means that you will revisit the content in many different ways. Definitely add different reading levels to your students. And we have to find some kind of way to evaluate what our students have done, right? So my suggestion is that you provide a variety of choices for your students to turn in the material. Maybe allow them to make a 3D model, maybe to allow them to provide experiences, just writing or even drawing pictures. Definitely have your students work in pairs and small groups. And I know you might be doing video conferencing, so definitely use your breakout rooms so they can work in pairs and give everybody a job. These are some accessibility features that are found in STEMscopes. They can actually have the content read to them, and they can use all those highlighting and annotating tools I talked about before. The last thing I want to talk about is use formative assessments. All of these and many more I have added to the folder. I'm going to give you the folder in a couple more minutes. And normally these are used by making copies and providing these to your students, but I wanted to show you. So what I did here is I actually put it as the background on my Google slide once again. And right here where it says type your answer here, your students can, if you add a text box right here, then your students can type on the paper without moving any part of the slide. Another adaptation would be just, you know, ask the question of your students. What are 3 things you learned today? Type them in the chat. And my suggestion is that you have your students don't hit return, don't hit enter until everyone is done. So give your students a couple minutes and say, tap your answer in the chat, but do not hit enter. So this keeps your students accountable. Make sure that they're not just copying somebody else's answer. So this is called chat waterfall. So when you're ready.
Hi, Veronica, it's Jason. The next session or demo for your team is probably going to start now. So I'm going to have to.
All right. So let me just go on to the slide where they can see the folder. Right here. So there is a tiny URL. Ken's going to put that on the chat so that you can grab the folder with all of the resources. And I'm sorry, there's no time for questions, but if you can put in the chat one thing from today that you can use with your students, that would be great.
Thank you, Veronica. We have posted the link to your folder, the tinyurl /STEMscopes-ELD.